Great. Well, so the first little kind of vignette was much more vague in my mind than the rest. But I was in the truck with my dad and his friend. So he had a friend who was visiting, so we were just kind of driving around. And but as would often happen when I was growing up, or if I was like visiting him from college, if we were like going out and for errands or whatever, and he was taking me along with him, like oftentimes we would stop at one of his like landscape jobs because he designs landscapes, and so we were. It seemed that was kind of what was going on. We were at this landscape job, and he had like an employee who was working. He's always had like usually one or two employees at a time, and he was just kind of like, we were sitting in the truck kind of parked in the driveway, and he was just kind of talking out the window to the employee. And I remember the house was like a beige, kind of small, humble looking kind of beige house, and the truck is kind of in between there and like a tool shed, and I'm sitting right in between my dad and his friend, kind of in the front seat of the truck. And his friend is a really big guy, so I'm a little bit smushed. And he seems like kind of a combination of a friend of my dad and his brother-in-law, who he's very friendly with, both of them. And they're both people who he really likes to joke around with. Like they really they're both of them are like really kind of funny guys. And so as my dad is talking to the employee, they start joking around, and they're just kind of, making jokes. And at a certain point, like I jump in and I make a joke, which is very uncharacteristic of me because like I'm very, very reserved around both my parents. I'm pretty uncomfortable with them in a lot of ways. And just in general, like people tend to kind of like, especially in groups of people perceive me as being very, very reserved and kind of stoic. And so like I don't make jokes a lot. And so like if I do something that breaks character, it always stands out to people. And that's something I don't like. Like I wish that I would just like be more kind of free, with myself and more spontaneous and not have it be a big deal. But because everyone like gets used to me being this way, then when I do something, then like it always has to get pointed out. And so I joined into the joke, and one of them, I think my dad's friend, was kind of like, oh, now he's making jokes now. And I was sort of like, and I just kind of, it was a little bit embarrassed, but I kind of laughed it off, and there's nothing dramatic about it, but that was basically all that happened. And at some point we drove around to the other side of the house, but I don't remember anything else. Second part. I arrived finally at the last terminal after like many layovers on an airplane, and I just had this feeling that I had been like wandering for a very long time, like through all of these hallways and I went through all these layovers, and I like wasn't even paying attention to the whole time. Like I was so tired and just like dazed out that like when I got there to the last place, I almost sort of felt like I had been like protected by Providence, sort of like, I can't believe I like got here, sort of. Nothing dramatic about it. It was just sort of like, I often find like in dream, like at the beginning of a dream, I'm like kind of fading in. Like I've been dazed out, and now I'm like kind of becoming aware again.
Gotcha.
And I'm like, whoa, like I'm glad that I didn't, miss my flight or something, because I think I wasn't paying attention to anything that happened before. And I had just returned. I guess I was visiting home from college because I just finished my this. By the way, this dream happened almost 2 years ago, and so I was finishing my bachelor's at the time, and so I would have, been visiting home after a semester, and even though I was living near my dad, so I didn't like take a flight. Like I would take a flight to get to my mom's, but my dad, I would just drive to him. But my dad and stepmother were the ones who picked me up. So, they were happy to see me, and they hugged me. And my dad was like, how's it going, college graduate? And this dream happened, I guess the semester, before I graduated. So, no, this would be three semesters before I graduated. So there was still plenty of time for me to graduate. But yeah, he said, like, how's it going, college graduate? And I sort of was like, oh yeah, wait, I just graduated college. I sort of just felt like I had just finished a semester. Like I didn't feel like I really like had made this big accomplishment. But it was nice of them. And so we're walking through the terminal to go to the car, and my dad mentioned that like he had sort of a celebration for me later on, but it's like really late. It's like 3 a.m. But he's thinking like, I bet that you're pretty hungry. You want to, like, there's a McDonald's here in the terminal. You want to just like stop here and get a little something to hold you over, which is a very realistic sort of thing. He would say like, do you want something to hold you over? And so I was like, sure. So we stopped there, and as my dad's going to like order the food, I just kind of tell him like what I want, because I'm like, I've got to go to the restroom, be right back. And I go there, and in the restroom there's like kind of this like gang of like tough guys kind of. And I don't like I don't like public bathrooms. Like I do get like nervous when there are a lot of people around, and especially people who like maybe don't have a strong like sense of like boundaries, sort of like so these guys just seem like very like, I don't know, guys who just like, they don't really care. And there's like one guy who's kind of like the leader, and he looks kind of like this sort of stereotypical sort of tough guy, like kind of tall and skinny, but like also kind of muscular. And like, I don't know, I don't have a specific image of him, but he's just sort of the like guy with a denim jacket and ripped sleeves or something like that. And but all of his like kind of gang around him are these like, the word that comes to mind is like these little like squirty guys. Like they're kind of like his like gang, and they have like bright red hair, and they're just kind of like, they kind of like I wouldn't say serve him, but they're kind of like, I don't know, they're his gang. And they all kind of like hover around him. And so I go to the stall, but I'm just there to blow my nose. So I'm like standing, facing the stall and like blowing my nose. And already this guy, like the gang leader, he's like knocking on the door, and he's like, hey, what's going on in there? And I'm like getting kind of annoyed. And at some point he's like, if you're like too scared to go with other people around, then like, why don't you just get out of here? Cause I got to use it. And he's like almost like looking over the stall, and like the other guys are kind of like, they're all kind of like trying to look through the cracks, and they're like looking around, and they're like, what's going on in there? And eventually the guy like rips the door open, and I was just standing there. So as he like rips the door open, I guess it sort of seemed like he sort of pulled me too. And so I just kind of like leaned into him as he like pulled, I pushed sort of, and I like leaned into his face, and I had the tissue in between us, and I was just kind of like, hey, I was just like blowing my nose. And he looked kind of embarrassed, but he didn't really react much, and he just kind of went around and went into the stall. So then I went back to my dad and stepmother, and it looked like they were about to get the McDonald's, but they had also brought with them like a small little celebratory snack of like this very small but like very like kind of like gourmet, like nice little like cake. And it like came in like a little gold box, and it was like cylindrical. It was like the size of a coffee mug, and sort of the shape of a coffee mug, but it was and it was kind of coffee colored too. Like it was sort of a kind of cream coffee colored, and seemed like it had like a little like cream sort of like little layer on it too, and a layer of like chocolate graham cracker kind of thing at the bottom. It was just like a very like kind of minimalistic, but like sort of aesthetically appealing kind of little cake that we would share 3 ways. And then there was and then they had a bottle of wine. And I just, sat there, and I could really see that like, they wanted to make me feel, proud of graduating, and especially my stepmother, was really like, giving me like a big smile. And I could see that she really like wanted, she really wanted me to feel proud. And yeah, that was where that ended. So this is the main part. it begins, I'm more like watching something happening. I'm not really part of what's going on. There's this man in Portland, Maine, I assume, because it's just for some reason I know that it's Portland, Maine, and it's at the ports. There's these, it's evening, the sun is going down, there's just a little bit of light left. The waves are choppy, and there's all these like kind of houses, buildings, boats, docks, and then there's this one like kind of 2 or 3 story building that's kind of dark red, like a barn color. And up at the top floor, there's a window, and I can kind of see the silhouette of a man looking out onto the ocean. And I'm kind of viewing it from the perspective like of the ocean looking at him. And I somehow just know that the backstory is that this man has a rivalry with Poseidon. He Poseidon has some problem with him. Like this man, he disobeys Poseidon, and he's kind of defiant. And so Poseidon had forbidden him from appearing at these ports. But the man just he comes anyway, and just, it's the evening, and I don't know if he just likes to look over, as the sun's going down or something. So as punishment, Poseidon sends the Kraken, that big squid octopus kind of thing, and it comes up out, it just kind of sticks its head up out of the water, and it's like this big, it's just a big monstrous kind of, I don't really know how to describe it. It was like much more the body than the tentacles. Like it was like a big kind of massive thing, not really blobby, but just kind of a big octopus kind of squid shaped thing. And it sends up a tentacle, and it reaches into the window, wraps around him and pulls him down. And so it's like dragging him through the ocean, and dragging him for until eventually they get to a town, and there's a town under the water. And for some reason I wanted to say that it was Dutch. It's definitely looks like an old European town. I went to Poland, and I've seen other pictures of European cities, and there's usually an old part of the city, and it's very nicely taken care of, and it's but it's just very old-fashioned buildings. And I feel like the buildings were there were a lot of green and yellow buildings, but it was a little bit faded, and just kind of old but nice looking. And the Kraken apparently almost governs the city, sort of. Everyone kind of knows not to mess with the Kraken, and it won't mess with them. And so it drops the man off somewhere in the city, in an alleyway or something, and says, I'm going to go talk to Poseidon. We're going to decide on your sentence, and I'm going to be back. And it seemed like the idea was that it was going to eat him. But then it just didn't, and the man just left. It was an empty threat. And I didn't really see him leave, but actually that whole thing just replayed a second time. I have that happen sometimes. Everything I just said there replayed. But then this time, when the Kraken dropped him off there, said, I'm going to come back. The man left, but he stayed in the city, and he just walked around. But now it's me. Now I'm seeing the dream as being the man, and it's me. So I'm walking around in the town, and I kind of just forget about the whole thing. But it sort of still seems like I'm aware that the Kraken is there, but for some reason I'm just not really worried. But it seems that a couple takes me in. I want to say they're in their 30s, so they're not as old as my parents, but older than me. And they kind of take me in. They give me refuge, but they're also showing me around, all different parts of the town. And it's kind of funny because the town is people just walk around the town, and they apparently can breathe underwater. but there are still like lots of tunnels that go from building to building if you don't want to go out into the water. So like it seems like all the buildings are connected, and they showed me around in like shops, and there's just like these mazes of hallways that just go around to different places, and some of them are like the old building style, but some of them are like these newer glass tunnels that you can see the water outside. And so I'm staying with the couple one night, and they kind of give me some space, and they give me a guest room. And when I'm by myself, I find myself reflecting on two memories. And the first one, I'm pretty sure what the first one was, if I have the order right, was I was remembering how I used to be in a band with Ed, Edd, and Eddy. You know that cartoon. Yeah. So I was like, remember how I was in a band with Ed, Edd, and Eddy, but remember how Kevin always used to like heckle us? And I was like, that wasn't very helpful, but we still had a good time. And I did have a band, you know, throughout middle school and high school. So it kind of like was like remembering my band, but it was with Ed, Edd, and Eddy. And then the second one was just like picturing myself like riding around outside in the sun on Heeley shoes, like those shoes that have the little wheels on the bottom. And I remember like I was wearing shorts and a white t-shirt, and I was much younger than in the first memory. It would be like me in like middle school or high school, but this was me in like elementary school. Maybe I'm like 8 years old. And I don't really look like myself in the memories. I never wore Heeley shoes. I had sort of, there's something about like the fact that I'm wearing a white t-shirt and shorts that sort of just, it doesn't really match me. Like I had a slight discomfort with like wearing shorts and like, I don't know, a white t-shirt. It just, for some reason, just doesn't seem like enough clothing almost. But it was sort of like, but in the memory, I'm like, you know, very sort of just like free. I seem like very free and like carefree. And it's, you know, sunny out. And also when I was that age, I really didn't even like playing outside. Weirdly enough, like I always wanted to be on the computer, and it wasn't until like high school that I started to like appreciate nature more. So after that, it was presumably the next day, and I'm like now finally heading back. I'm going to go back up to land, but now I'm actually going through like a terminal. I don't know if it's like that I'm going to like, I'm going down this long hallway, and I don't know if it's going to bring me to a submarine that's going to take me up, or if I'm just thinking of it as an airport, but it feels like I'm walking through an airport terminal. But because we're underwater, like it's this giant sort of like glass tunnel, and I can see the water outside. But not only can I see the water outside, but also below me, like the whole walkway is like a big giant fish tank. It's not like I'm seeing the ocean underneath. It's like I'm walking on top of like this big tank, and it's contained by like the floor, which I somehow knew was called liquid foam. And it was sort of like a soft surface, but it didn't really squish. And if I looked at it, it would sort of have like these little like bumps and ridges. Like I can see like the material it's made of. But if I like, unless I'm really looking at it, like I can clearly see everything right through it. And there are these like gigantic schools of fish going by, and like all this diversity of fish. And when I decide to like look down and look at the fish, they're like the size of like sunfish. They're those just like gigantic fish, and I know that they're called zebra fish, and they have zebra stripes. But also when I like look down at one looks up at me, and it like flares its teeth at me, and it has like horse teeth, these like big horse teeth. And I was like, whoa, that's a fish with horse teeth. So I keep walking down the hallway, and as I keep going, the hallway is kind of like mounting up in the middle, like almost like 10 feet high. So there's like this, it's lower on the right and the left side, but it mounts up into a hill, and I'm kind of getting wobbly because it's not totally flat on the right side where I'm walking. So eventually I go up to the middle part, to the hill, and as I'm walking, I see there are like resting areas, benches, and there are also like these posts for posters. And I look, and now all of a sudden I'm with my brother and my older brother. I just have one brother. And looking at this poster, and we're trying to make out what this is. There's some abstract shape, and we're going like, what is this? And then my brother goes, oh, it's a church. And I go, oh yeah, it is a church. Then I realize it's a church. And my brother's not religious, by the way, too. But I notice, oh yeah, it's a church, but it's this very like kind of cartoonish, sort of generic looking church. It almost looks like a purple, like gummy candy, kind of like in the shape of a church, like just a very simple sort of graphic design. And so I'm like, okay, that's interesting, and that's I figure it's like a sort of very non-specific kind of Christian non-denominational church, just very generic looking. And so we're going, okay, what is it? Like, are there any, what else is going, like, what is this poster for? And as we're looking for something, my brother goes, oh, it's a fertility ritual. I'm like, oh yeah, it does say fertility ritual right under it. So I noticed that, like, after he points that out. And so then we're like, okay, so what does that mean? So then we're looking around trying to see if there are other posters that are going to tell us more, which we don't see. But we do see a small group of people, all like middle-aged people, kind of walking past us. And in the back, or we see on their shirts, they were like yellow or white shirts, and they have that church logo on it. So we're like, oh, maybe they know. So we go and we kind of catch one of the people who was behind them, and he was like a man. I would say he was a man like in his 50s. He had white hair. He looked kind of like a guy my mom dated at one point, and just had I don't know, kind of a kind of casual look to him. I think he was wearing like sunglasses and wearing shorts. And we approached him with the question, like kind of ask him what this is about, but he just kind of knew what our question was, and so he immediately responded. And his response was this. He was like, "It's philosophy. No, it's not a fertility ritual." And then he left. And my sense being that he was like, kind of like no, like this isn't some like, new age sort of woo woo kind of thing. Like this is philosophy. But then, he left, and but those were pretty much his exact words. It's pretty rare that I get that. He goes, "It's philosophy. No, it's not a fertility ritual." So then when he leaves, we're just kind of like, okay. And I'm just thinking, well, okay, but why did it say fertility ritual? And that's the end of the dream.